No. Okay, so hopefully you can't be on my phone.
Okay. All right, we'll get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to the October PAB board meeting. Start off with introductions, and we'll go from there.
Good evening, I'm Senior, and I sit on the
Hi, I'm Rabbi Dora Settle, and I'm the Northwest Council seat on the board.
Keith Patterson, Alliance seat.
Good evening, Arlene Brown, Alliance seat, and also Vice Chair.
Larry Knox, Northeast seat, and board chair.
Good evening, I'm William Clark, the mayor's appointee.
Good evening, Yvonne Wilson, council seat. Everybody.
Hello, Sherry Walker Card, Interim Executive Director.
All right, thank you, everybody. I do want to say we won't have interpreters tonight. We did have some scheduled. They weren't able to make it at the last minute. So we are working on a process, especially because Mary, one of our board members, obviously needs an interpreter to be able to fully participate in the meetings, to have additional backups if our scheduled and contracted interpreters aren't able to make it. It's the first time that's happened, so we apologize. We are going to work to make sure we have backups if there's a last minute day of cancellation in the future. All right. We do have here our meeting minutes that were emailed out. So are there any additions, subtractions, corrections to the minutes from our September 7th meeting? All in favor of approving the minutes? Oh, motion to approve the minutes.
Yes.
I'll move it.
Mr. Clark, seconded by Ms. Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes approved. We'll start off with staff reports.
Thank you. Just a few things before the members of the management team come up and give you updates. In terms of the hiring, we have posted now on the city's website and the PAB website and sent it out 2 attorney positions, 1 senior attorney position and 1 deputy executive director position, which also will be general counsel. It's posted. And we're sending it to a lot of different places, and we're happy and glad about that. We're still waiting for posting for the professional development training director, the part-time webmaster, and language access coordinator. We're really looking forward to those getting posted so we can fill those positions as well. The positions of community engagement specialist and community engagement manager were posted, they closed, and we have a number of applicants that we're looking through the applications now, and interviews will start to be scheduled very soon. So we're moving forward in those areas. Yeah, I think that's it. I'll follow up on some of the others after some of the team members come up. We have 3 of the management team members here who will be giving us some updates. And if I've missed something in a report, slip me a note, Vanessa, or anybody. We'll start in the order that's on. Do you have an agenda? So do you have an agenda? Yes. So this is the seat that you get to sit in and come up with your reports. So that the public, the community can see everybody. So we're starting with, and you can introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Beltran. I'm the Director of Investigations. And just have a few updates. We've established some policy around incidents that have occurred prior to the formation of the PAB. Originally, when the PAB opened, we received a ton of calls, a lot of which had happened many, many years before the formation. And as you know, law looks forward and not backwards. So those are called temporal jurisdiction issues. So we were able to sort of close those out and move those out of the way. We have new policy established for cases that require more information from the reporter. We have a procedure of reaching out to them. A lot of times we cannot get hold of them by phone or email, so we'll send a letter. We have information in the letter regarding, the statutes of limitations. We open it for 30 days. If we don't hear back from them in 30 days, we will close the case out for lack of information. but they can always call and reopen the case, so long as the statutes has not exceeded, statute of limitations, that is. And then, policy established on how to handle cases that have exceeded statutes of limitations. The ones that have exceeded, some of them unfortunately have told. So if we send in an investigation request, like a request for information to the police before the statute of limitations expires, that tolls the statute. That means it stops, the clock stops ticking. So when that happens, sometimes we'll get some information back. We won't get information back. We'll get partial information back. And then we'll send a second request for information that may have been sent after the statutes of limitations, and our PD is saying that the statutes of limitations has expired, even though we've told it by our initial contact, and that is backed by case law. And that's something I am going to bring up to legal. I'm not quite sure if legal is aware that RPD is responding in that particular matter. Certainly, if it has expired and we have not made contact prior to the expiration with RPD, then there's not, then we're out of luck. But certainly if we made contact, and a lot of them we have. So a lot of them are still valid cases. And then, as you know, tonight we are closing 3 cases. And I can answer questions about those. And I expect you guys to have a lot of questions. And I'm sure Sherry maybe said the MOU is already signed.
Go ahead.
The MOU is signed. Woo!
One single
Version of it, yes. Yeah.
We had to whittle it down to one issue, but I'm so happy that it's signed. And that issue is downloading body-worn camera footage. So right now we have some body-worn camera footage, but we can't analyze it. So our forensics department isn't really able to do a whole lot with it. This allows us to download it. It does not include active criminal cases. Unfortunately, the DA has stated through city legal that the reasoning is not an alternative interpretation of the charter, but her personal belief that edited body-worn camera footage would be leaked to the public. Which is actually good, because if it was an interpretation of the charter, then we'd have a problem. But so we will deal with that accordingly in time. And then, as you know, that there has been a officer-involved shooting. City law and the police department will not release any information regarding active criminal cases until the suspect has been arraigned, which is a slight elevation from the DA's position that we can't download, because now we're not getting anything downloaded or not downloaded. We're not getting any response at all. We have gotten no response, and it is our understanding that other members of the government have seen the footage, and we have not seen anything. We don't have anything on that case.
That's not acceptable.
I would just like to make a point, which is that we have the documented leaks that we've had around PAB issues have come from the law department or HR, and the city had said they had concerns about it, but they have never followed up or investigated it. So I just want to point out that we're not the leaking problem.
Oh yeah, no body-worn camera footage has been leaked from us.
Right, but I'm just saying, but confidential information around personnel has been leaked by the city related to PAB. So I wanted to make that.
Okay, I did not know that.
I had a question. So I'm going back to the DA's concern. There's no legal argument that she's making.
No legal argument, just her arbitrary opinion.
All right, and this is, we're legally constituted to have access to things.
Absolutely.
And your opinion is not legal. It's something that
It's
should be of
arbitrary
concern.
and capricious. It's any of those things that are 70. Yeah.
So if the public PSS is able to investigate because they have access, if DA wants to investigate, they have access, and to just let's say the shooting or anything else that they have a concern about, and another body that's constituted to be able to investigate, the Attorney General, I guess if she wanted to investigate, would have access. The law allows her to do that. And if we also, which the law says that we have access, right now we're not giving it because of a concern.
Because
That's not
right, because of the DA's concern.
Okay.
That is correct.
And we're working on getting a meeting. We've tried a few times, so we're working again on getting a meeting with the district attorney. I'm told once the trial finished that she's involved in, then I'll get a call back and we'll follow up and set up a meeting with the DA.
Okay.
For the record, I believe it's been 7 months since we've tried to, since the PAB, not we as in I, but 7 months that we have tried to make contact with the DA and to sit down and have a discussion, because we do have well-documented 5 months worth of working with IT. We have ordered special equipment to make sure our system is secure, spent a lot of money on it. We have everything in place to go to view things securely. And she won't even meet with us. So she's canceled multiple meetings.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, yeah.
She's had some reasons, different things have come up, whatever, but we've tried, and we've had meetings on the calendar that were canceled.
So for your team and yourself, if somebody has put a complaint in and they call and ask where the progress is, we have internal, stacks of cases to get through. What are the main external things that are stopping your staff and you to be able to give that person who's had a complaint, some resolution or it getting to us for review?
Well, if it's a criminal complaint, we can't do anything. They are now saying that we can't have access. Prior to this case, this recent shooting, they did give us a little bit of information, not enough, but they did give us something. Now it is a complete nothing. So that would be one if it's criminal. If it's not criminal, we have been told we cannot interview police and we've actually been referred to interview police. Some of our responses to our request for information has that you would need to confer with the officer involved, verbatim. And then they turn around and tell us that we can't have an interview, allegedly because we don't have a process, but we do have a process in our training manual. And we are getting, and that was going to lead me to the next one, we are having training on interviewing on next Friday from Empire Justice, from Jill. And then the following week, we have a week's worth of training on interview through the PEACE program. And that is one that the FBI utilizes. So that's going to be a really, really in-depth training. We really shouldn't have to jump through any hoop.
Right.
But training is fantastic, and training the team is wonderful. And after this next week, we will be certified, and we're going to make another ask. Sorry, I know that was long-winded, but basically just a block of information. Sometimes we get partial information. Recently, I think a recent example was we asked for GPS and we were told that it doesn't exist, that RPD, to their knowledge, does not have GPS. And then when I went to the civilian training, I was told that, yeah, of course we have GPS. And when I was in my ride-along, they were talking to me about their GPS. They was actually walking me through it, their little computer on the, I thought that was funny. But that was just to say that they don't have GPS is inaccurate.
So a big concern that I've had, and I've heard from the community also, and then even as the board, is there's process issues you have to work through. That's what we're trying to, that can slow things down, just figuring out a process. But legally, if there's a question or a continuing question of our right to access information, that's a major problem. If we're figuring out the process of how we do things, that's understandable to work through that. We've been trying to do that for many months. But if there are still, understandings in law enforcement or other places that we don't have a legal right to this, to continue to do the investigations that the public has asked us to do, that's a major concern. And there are other things we may have to do as a board to kind of push that, which I'd rather not have to, but I'm really concerned about people that have complaints in and want to have resolution, and there are issues that are external that are stopping you and your staff from being able to do that.
That's correct.
Especially when the issues are unfounded.
Yeah, we want to, this is exoneration and other things that could happen based off that too, yeah.
And as you will see through the three cases that we've just generated in the past 1 month, for a closing, we are going to start turning them, and you're going to start seeing them a lot more. And so the processes are smooth. We are ready to go. We're ready to do it all now. We're just hitting roadblocks that are external.
Well, I want to tip my hat to Sherry, you and the team. We're making progress. We can see the progress. The community sees that we're making progress. And the log jam has been hurt. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And then lastly, we just have a few other trainings, some Fourth Amendment trainings. We've completed that, some charter training. And we have some more Fourth Amendment trainings with the public defender next week. Oh yeah, our forensic team is going to the LEVA Symposium. It's a nonprofit corporation committed to provide advanced training and certification in the science of forensic video analysis. That's a really good one. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Case management?
Good evening.
Great evening.
I'm Laura Savvy Page. I'm Director of Case Management. Just going to go over some numbers in reference to the annual report that was released recently for fiscal year 2022 through 2023. We received 360 reports. Out of that, 266 were police misconduct or allegations or commendations. 15 were policy and oversight, and 51 were non-RPD related, meaning they were out of jurisdiction, so we couldn't investigate those. That covered June 2022 through June 2023. And for the month of July, there were 26 reports received. August, there were 19 reports that were received. In September, there were 15, so a total of 60 total reports received for the month, for the 3 months. Typically, most of our phone calls, our intakes are received via phone call or online submission. We do have a few that were walk-ins, and then also from PSS and referrals from 311.
So how the walk-ins work? Now that's pretty low.
So we work on a
Right.
buddy system here with case management. So individuals are able to come into the office. A case manager will escort them to the interview room, and the intake is done there. Typically, it takes about an hour. Or if someone wants to come in and they want to just do their intake on their own, we have laptops set up. So if they wanted to do that, they can do that as well.
And what are the hours for when people can come in if they want to?
9 to 5.
So we just come in and wait, or
So they'll stop at the security desk, and the security desk will then alert someone here. And then once the case manager gathers like the laptop and any other information they need, then they'll take them and escort them to the case management room to do the intake. So it's a secure area. So they're free to have the conversations, and at that time they'll receive a confirmation report and PTN number, so they can reference it. If they have any questions, they can call back and speak to the case manager. And then once it's assigned to an investigator, any follow-up they may need, they can also do that as well.
So can the individual track the progress of the case once they file the complaint?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Can the individual track the progress as the investigation progresses through?
Yes, and I'm gonna double back. The PTN is a personal tracking number.
Oh, okay.
But they can track that. So as the case goes through the workflow, the case manager will provide them with a letter letting them know what stage their case is in. But if they wanted to call, they can call a hotline number. They'll speak to a case manager, and if someone doesn't answer, they call back within a couple hours and give them an update.
Thank you. Great, thank you so much. Progress.
Policy and oversight.
Good evening, everyone.
Great evening.
My name is Dejan Paul, Director of the Policy and Oversight Division here at PAB. No major updates this month, unfortunately. What I will say is, when last we spoke, we told you that we were going to finish up our analysis of right to know public input. Luckily, we have concluded that, and Sherry will be passing out that analysis, which I've emailed to you all previously. In addition, We are fine tuning our draft of our review of RPD General Order 680, which is the test policy update. And we're hoping to have that proposal for change out relatively soon. I understand right to know is on the agenda for later, so I guess I'll be speaking to you all very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with regard to public affairs and community engagement, Natalie's not able to be here to say about it. Roosevelt's not here, but the updates for public affairs and community engagement, they've done a lot over the summer. And it's really getting these two positions filled. So that's a big focus for us as well. And then responding to the media inquiries about the annual report. They're working on that. Operations, not a whole lot, just a continuation of working to identify the space that we will either move into or stay when our lease is up in the spring of next year. So we're continuing to work with the Department of Environmental Services, Architectural Service, and the real estate of the city to finally make some decisions around here.
Is there a
No
time?
decisions met.
Is there a time frame when we have to decide by, or what?
Depends on whether there's going to be build outs or not, because we have to get here by April, and people they know that. So we'll have, those departments are working very closely with the owners of the buildings.
Also, we have to get out of this building by April of 2024.
Yes, or we renegotiate and we stay here. So we're trying to figure all that out and look at all the dollars and all of those kinds of things to determine where the final move or the next move. And that's all I have.
Just one question. When you submit a job proposal to HR, do they send it out immediately? Do they post it immediately so people can apply for it, or do they wait a while?
It's not an immediate posting, no. There's
Oh,
a process that they have to go through, and it takes a while. And fortunately, we've had our positions available since the new fiscal year starting in July, and it's taking a while for many of them to be posted. So it's not an immediate posting. There's a process they have to go through, and it's not immediate.
All right.
So are the jobs coming from internal or external?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, like HR is posting it for the city?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so a lot of companies that do internal, I want to say first, then they do external.
Oh,
afterwards. So is it both?
It's just one, and then people are
That's
aware.
anybody?
Yes,
Internal, okay.
yes. And that's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions for Sherry? All right, I'll do the chair's report is next on the agenda. First thing is we still have one open board seat. We are past the time when that should have been filled, to say it lightly. East District board seat. I did check in with council, city council earlier in the week, and that seat has not been filled yet, obviously. So I didn't want to come out here and say anything without that being filled. So if you're interested in applying, I believe they're still taking applications, but that process needs to be improved. We need to have that last board seat. If you live in the East District of the city of Rochester or know somebody that lives in the East District, please consider applying. You could join us here and be a part of this process. Underneath the law, when there's a vacancy, it's supposed to be filled within 90 days. And we're way past that for when Reverend Nikoloff, who had that seat before, left our board earlier in the year. So it's really important that all parts of the city have representation, and the East District, does not have representation on our board right now. So if you're interested or know somebody that's interested, if you're not sure if you live in the East District, you can call the Board of Elections or go online to see who your city council person is, to see if the East is on there. And there are new lines, so with redistricting, you may think you're not in the East and you may be in the East now. There's a few streets that changed. But we really want to get somebody on there, and it's not a pick of me, it's a pick of the community and of council. And if you live in the East District, please consider applying. Also, tomorrow, I know there's members of our staff that are interested in unionizing. And I won't speak much on it because it's, an internal decision for them. But we as a board a year ago publicly supported the staff's unionization efforts. I'm a union organizer in my day work, so I'm definitely in support of that. And it's been over a year now. And so again, we kind of are iterating the call for the city to recognize our staff that want to unionize and for that process of figuring out which union the staff are going to be in and the city, recognizing that be concluded as quickly as possible. It shouldn't take a year. It's city workers are unionized isn't something unique, and we really hope as a board that this can come to conclusion for the staff, so the members that are eligible can be a part of the union. Also, October 18th, is that the court date? Yep. So there is exciting news, which we talked about before. We have a little bit of an update in a meeting that some of the board took part in. But October 18th is the hearing in front of the Court of Appeals about our disciplinary power. It's been a long time coming, that case. Obviously, when the charter was voted on by over 70%, 75% of the members of the community to establish a PAB, disciplinary power was a part of that charter, and there's a legal case around that right now that has not been heard, although it was first filed over a year ago. So that's finally has a court date, as I mentioned before, October 18th, and I think at 2 p.m. It's going to be streaming on the Court of Appeals website. We may stream it at ours, but if not, this New York State Court of Appeals.
We're actually the last case in a session that starts at 2 p.m. And if you go by the timing that the court's laid out, it's not going to be until late afternoon.
Okay.
But you can check on the website, you can see it.
Thank you. So don't get on at 2, but don't wait till 4. Yeah. And the case, each argument, I think for each case takes about a half hour, more or less. So it's if you're looking at the other cases, at least do a half hour, if not more, for each of the ones before ours. We did have an update with Andrew Chelly, who's arguing that case on our behalf and the city's behalf with City Council. We did that together with City Council earlier in the week. So it was good to get our questions answered, and he talked about some of the strategy, which is in the briefs, which you can go online and look at. But we're really looking forward to that case finally being argued. There is also another case from Syracuse that has to do with their accountability process that's also being argued on the same day. So again, October 18th, in a couple of weeks, definitely watch that. There won't be a decision that day, but the arguments will happen, and then within a few weeks or months, depending, there will be a decision rendered by the court. Any questions on that? Okay. That's all I have for the chair's report. Committee reports. Training committee.
We'll be meeting on Tuesday with our Director of Operations, Rosabelle Antonetti, we hope finalize the call for proposals for the search team and get going with the schedule to do the hiring.
Okay. I asked for training, but you did that search, so let's get to.
Oh, it's
okay. But
I apologize.
Yeah,
No. Research.
No,
I was so ready to say
no,
that.
I'm glad.
Apologies.
Yeah, we are hiring a deputy executive director, which is good. Sherry's given us much grace. I won't ask her anymore if she wants to apply because she gave us about 45 no's. But it is very important that we have that position filled for our permanent executive director. So I'm glad that's making some progress. For the training committee, we have one more board seat to fill, but it is really important with the newer board members. Most of our board is new this year. Majority are going to be new folks that weren't here a year ago, let alone all at the beginning of the year. Getting that position filled with the training coordinator is really important. A lot of the staff there have been, as a side, trying to help out with trainings and scheduling, but that is somebody that needs to do that full time for the board and for the staff to make sure all that is set, especially for us as boards members as we go through the training that is needed for us to do our board work and the reviews. As that work increases, we'll need more board members that have more training than our new board members have had at the moment. So there are some online that we've been able to do. There's opportunities to do NACOL as things that are coming up and that our board can take part in, but having a dedicated schedule for us as board members to go through our trainings, especially to get new people, is really important. Having that position filled will be key to that.
Yeah, just kudos to Roosevelt who's taking that on and is really pushing through that to help get all the training for staff and.
All right. Any questions for the search committee or the training committee? Okay, old business.
John's coming back, talk about the right to know.
They're really here to answer questions about it.
For people watching, can you just give like a 2-minute overview of the
Sure.
process and then what's in here?
So all of our proposal for changes, which is our colloquial name for policy recommendation for our RP, they start with a draft of what we think would be a good thing to do about the policy change. After that draft is published, we go through a robust period of public input where we go out to the public, the community, partner with organizations and seek feedback on that draft and any revisions the community might deem necessary. From there, we conduct an analysis of that information, provide it to the board to vote on whether they want to accept, whether you all want to accept, revise the draft or reject the draft. Once a draft is accepted, we then send the policy recommendations directly to RPD, City Council, and the Mayor. And that is the life cycle of our proposals for change. This particular one, right to know, we look at 3 different areas where we think change is necessary. One is the conduction of voluntary consent searches. This is when there isn't grounds for a search, just an interaction in which an officer is seeking an individual to consent to being subjected to a search. We are we're seeking to amend how they are conducted by requiring the body-worn camera to be on during the obtaining of that consent, for the use of clear, non-threatening language when seeking the consent, for language access when seeking the consent. The second area is identification of police officers. We are looking for officers to have to carry business cards to give to folks they interact with as a means of readily identifying themselves and for the sake of folks to keep track of the interactions they have with RPD. And then the last thing is data collection and reporting. We're hoping to really create a more robust way of collecting demographic data on those who have interacted with RPD. That's a really abridged version of this very detailed proposal. I hope everyone's had the time to read, reflect, and provide feedback. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I'm just confused because earlier you said you hadn't yet incorporated.
We do not.
Okay, well, let me finish the sentence so other people know what we're talking about. The public input. And I guess, is your understanding we'll pass this and then we will amend it in terms of the public input, or what was the thinking about
So
that?
again, the 3 options here are accept, revise, reject. These are board level decisions based off the bylaws that the board has created. Our job was to collect the public input, provide it to you all with a list of what the public would like to see revised. Then it's up to you to decide whether you want us to go back and revise it, that would be one vote, or whether you want to accept it as is, if the board deems it to be in the best form, or to reject it altogether.
And you said once we accept it, we can't go back and revise it.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but that decision's for advisory.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But I got, no, this is something else. So if someone is stopped by the police or picked up by the police, this is what we're talking about, correct?
Stops, yes.
Stop, not picked up.
Picked up wouldn't necessarily be covered by this policy recommendation. There are already policies in place for, let's say, arrest or a pure detainment. This mostly deals with non-arrest, non-custodial interactions with police.
Okay, so say I'm out there and I'm doing something wrong, somebody call the police on me. Okay, right, so the police comes. All right, after the police get there, then they might ask me, can they search my person or my purse or whatever, right?
Well, if
I'm just saying,
I understand your
search
question,
my,
if I understand your question, you said if you're doing something wrong and someone calls the cops, is that right?
yeah.
All right.
This is for like stopping at us when they checking people for see whether they cars. I'm just trying to get an understanding of what it is.
Yeah, so if you're doing something wrong, and there's, reasonable suspicion for the officer to conduct a search or probable cause for an arrest, this will not apply. But let's say it's not clear you're doing something wrong. You're just walking down the street. An officer sees something that they deem to be suspicious, but not rise to the level of criminality. And in furtherance of teasing out their suspicion, they walk up and say, hey, do you mind if I quickly do a search of your bag or a search of your purse? That's where this comes into play. Instances like that.
I'm just saying, but wouldn't there be an illegal stop? Okay, because I'm just walking down the street and I'm not doing anything that looks like it's wrong. The police officer have no reason to stop it. That's what I'm trying to get a clear understanding of.
Right. So there's a difference between, a clear inquiry and a detainment. A detainment would rise to a level like a Fourth Amendment concern. This is when they stop you and you're not free to leave. But they're just stopping you and just having a conversation where you are free to leave, then you can do so. And that's also where they can ask for a consent search. It's instances like that this policy would touch upon.
And it's a consent to search, which you can say, no.
That's correct.
I also noticed that several people in the community had concerns about being able to identify the officers that are talking to them, asking questions, those kinds of things, which is one of the reasons you mentioned the business card or, that the badge be seen or something, so we know the officer that we're dealing with. Which is good because, as I always say, every meeting, we're also looking for people who are doing the right thing. And in order for us to honor police officers who are doing the right thing, are officer friendly, we need to know who we're dealing with.
That's right.
So one question I had was, one of the recommendations that you were making was regarding putting an exhaustive list together for exigent circumstances. And I agree with the person that wrote in and said that it needs to be purged from the document altogether, because you can't create an exhaustive list. I mean, basically, it does give the opportunity where it becomes subjective to the officer. I thought it was. And I don't see us creating an exhaustive list, because I don't think such a thing exists. But in the other question, I wasn't aware that police officers still can cover their badges for no reason.
No, so there has to be a reason. Permission must be granted for the covering of the badge. An officer cannot just freely cover their badge.
Okay.
With permission, they can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. To touch back on your point about the exigent circumstances. So the original document uses the phrase exigent circumstances. There's not a list. However, one of the things the community harped on was that term, and the community felt as though we should create a list clearly defining circumstances that would count. That's a decision for you.
But is that possible?
So, it is possible. I'm not in a position to speak on, what's best for the community based off their wishes, nor do I want to make any sort of decision that could influence how you all operate tonight. But I will say, having had plenty of experience in legislative settings, terms like this, which really is a term of art that comes from those who practice law. It's a Fourth Amendment thing that has been litigated over time, and clear examples can be found throughout New York State case history. This term is a bit more clear than people would realize. To the plain ear, it sounds vague, but if you practice law, you do some legal research, you'll pretty much get a sense of what is and what isn't in exigent circumstances. In addition to that, when you're looking to pass legislation, when you have things that are very tight, concrete, but need to apply to real world situations like officer interactions, it can complicate the passage of a piece of legislation. But again, that's something for the board and the community to work out.
Because again, I mean, you got this exhaustive list, and all of a sudden the officer's got to pull out this huge page to see if anything qualifies. So, which could, slow up policing also. And the other question that I had, relative to this was, I was glad to see that you were taking no action on the perceived identity of individuals that are stopped, because that could easily be manipulated, by the officer if we would, because we don't know what their perception is, and so I was glad to see that you weren't taking any action.
Yeah, that idea really comes from California's RIPA legislation, which is Racial Identification Policing Act. The thought is to begin to measure how police perceive those that they interact with and whether that influences decisions that they make. The problem is it's not really verifiable data, but it can give some insight as to why certain trends make sense. I think I saw it from Reverend Patterson.
I just was going to add that anytime you have a list, it's not ever exhausted. And so if you happen to be one of those outliers, so it's not on the list. Well, that kind of like defeats the purpose of having an exhaustive list, because you're never going to you're not going to cover everything.
That's right. The recommendation from the community is to create a non-exhaustive list, but to begin the process of creating a list of situations where it's clear.
All right, I have a question. So in terms of process, each of these things has either does or doesn't have a recommended revision. So should we go through these? I mean, how do you want us to tell you what to, do you want us to go through these one by one and
I
say,
think that would be best.
we would like you to do this revision or not? Okay,
You mean right now?
but right now. All right, that's gonna be time consuming. Okay.
Let's start it. Let's see. I mean, if we get deep into the woods, we may have to.
Okay, so we're gonna start with voluntary consent searches?
Yes. So this is item A, subsection I, body worn cameras, which is page 3 out of 6. So 32 comments provided on the intersection of body worn camera use with searches. They largely provided comment on when officers should use their body worn cameras, suggesting that there should not be times that an officer is not reporting.
Can we change that to take the double negative back?
While attempting to gain voluntary consent to search. Based on these, the recommendation here is to remove exemptions for body worn camera use while obtaining voluntary consent to search.
Change.
So do you want us to make a motion on each of these, or should we do it that way?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to move that we make that revision. Anyone want to second it or discuss it?
Yeah, I'll second it, but I had a question relative to it also. When I went on the ride along, I was informed that not all officers wear body worn cameras. I guess if you're a sergeant and above, then you have an option to either wear or not to wear. So are we saying that all officers involved should wear body worn cameras, or do we leave that exception in there?
So this is going to be considered a supplement to their body-worn camera manual, which governs the overall usage of body-worn cameras. That exemption exists in that document.
Okay.
I will say that that is a product that the policy and oversight team is considering for the future. It's reviewing that entire manual and making recommendations to that.
Oh, so yeah, I'll second that, and I'm in favor.
And this is while obtaining voluntary consent, not all the time.
Oh, okay.
So this is while they're obtaining that.
Okay.
So basically, the superior officer shows up, like a sergeant or a lieutenant, they don't have to have one. I'm just asking that question, I'm sorry.
There's another policy to.
Yes, that's gonna be
So it's a requirement. That's something,
Yeah.
again, that the policy and oversight team has placed on our agenda. So we will be looking at the body-worn camera manual to address these very concerns. So I don't know the board, whether it's operating with Robert's Rules of Order. If it is, motion in the second.
Yeah,
Right, so we should be discussing or call the question.
Right.
yeah, yeah, I think we're still in discussion right now, so I haven't called the vote yet. Any other discussion on adding what Rabbi Sato suggested?
Well, what the,
Rabbi, would you be kind enough to repeat what you want to take out?
sure, but there's no exception for the need to use a body worn camera while voluntary consent to search is being obtained.
You want to
In
take
other
that
words,
out?
No, I'm supporting the revision. The revision
okay.
says that an officer should have to have a body worn camera
Yes.
on while obtaining voluntary consent to search.
Okay.
So we can, this is where we accept.
Or we're just, any other discussion?
Oh.
And that we can move to a vote. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, subsection 2 on language. 31 comments were provided on the language that is used for directives on executing the voluntary consent search. These comments all call for additional specificity and added language in one or more of the following areas. First, a hierarchy of officer concerns for people versus property. Second, circumstances which constitute as exigent. And based on those comments, the following revisions were suggested. Create a non-exhaustive list of exigent circumstances. And create a hierarchy to ensure that people's safety is prioritized over property.
This is, again, when I looked at the comments, I noticed that several people indicated that it should be purged altogether, that it should be taken out of the document.
Should we have a motion before the discussion?
Oh, you just,
No, I just wanted to get clarification, but,
I'm gonna be parliamentarian.
yeah, so,
yeah, so which recommendation are you specifically, are we bringing up to discuss right now? They create a non-exhaustive list or, okay. So on the motion of creating a non-exhaustive list of exigent circumstances, that's on the floor now.
Right.
We get a second to discuss it. All right.
Second,
All right.
any discussion? Okay, on the not
So who moved that?
I moved it and then Clark seconded.
Again, on the
Plugging in.
non-exhaustive list, I mean, when I saw comments saying that it should be purged altogether, I agreed with that because we're talking about, consent, right? The person giving consent to have their vehicle or whatever searced. So to give consent, I mean, I guess there's nothing suspicious around it, just all to a different level. So if you have that in there and the person says, no, I'm not going to give consent, then the officer can say, well, there's exigent circumstances here. So I'm gonna do it anyway.
That's what Fourth Amendment would come into play, because if they don't have the right to search, they would then be acting outside the code of law. It would be a limited search.
Okay.
So this wouldn't touch that, and there are other avenues there.
But, you know, if it's voluntary, I think it should be voluntary. I don't think it should be escalated to another level if you got an individual that hasn't done anything wrong. And, you know, the officer just wants to search the car. I'll leave it at that. But,
Well, do you want to make a motion about what the language should be, what we should want them to do?
on the voluntary consent, I think it should be purged.
So what should be purged? Can you be specific?
The exigent circumstances.
Okay.
I mean, if it's voluntary, then I don't understand the need to have that in there.
What if you hear a child screaming inside the car?
Well,
That's against cause.
Yeah, that's cause.
Okay.
Yeah. Now those are different. It's not voluntary anymore.
No, okay, never mind.
I guess we can't change case law, we can't change law, obviously. So by making this change legally, what effect would that have or not have? Because if we're undermining what's already the legal authority that's there, it doesn't make sense we have a different opinion, but the law is the law. So I don't know, is there, what's that conflict, I guess, or tension?
My personal opinion, exigent circumstances.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
My personal opinion, exigent circumstances, I think would cover almost everything. I think call for us to create a non-exhaustive list is to make it very clear what circumstances would be exigent. I don't know what that would look like. And this would require a lot of legwork from my team to go back and really start to tease out and suss out what those sort of examples might be.
And would that be, legally, is it, you have to kind of almost verify each of those as a legal, non-exigent circumstance, and it's kind of, I don't know, I don't want to get far afield because we want to be widely thinking, but I don't want us to have documents that are amorphous with ideas that are hard to justify legally.
What's the intention behind this?
This is a community.
Yeah, did they, what their concerns were
Their concern-
specifically is not knowing what that means?
Yeah, and
I interpret that a little different. It seemed like the community was concerned that this could be used to escalate a non-criminal stop. I mean, in reading.
From what you heard.
Yeah, so I was active in most of these.
Yeah, right.
And the actual call here is just the lack of clarity. People want to be assured and know what circumstances would allow an officer to forego obtaining the consent in the way prescribed in this particular policy proposal. Again, this touches on use of body-worn camera and the use of non-threatening language. So to be in violation of this policy, you would have to have your body-worn camera off for a reason that is non-exigent, or you would have to use language that isn't necessarily compliant with this legislation. So the idea of exigent circumstances touches on those very particular pieces.
Wait, are you saying exigent circumstances is related to the body-worn camera?
It's related to this entire section.
Right, but the body-worn camera use to me is a separate subsection of that section as opposed to what we're talking about now.
It is.
So it's not, okay, so it's not about saying exigent circumstances allow the officer to not use the body-worn cameras. They allow them to search your car even if you didn't consent or whatever.
That's right. So the public feedback, when we were conducting this, they looked at it from the dual aspect. So while most of the feedback happened during the language portion of this, most folks were actually talking about more than one thing at the same time.
So here's the thing. Could we limit the scope? I mean, can we say, exigent circumstances should be limited to situations within these areas?
I'm not quite sure what that would look like.
Well, because there are lists, I mean, I'm looking there about, there are specific things that, like the officer in hot pursuit of a fleeing felon, right? Like there are very specific things that are listed in terms of exigent circumstances. So.
But that wouldn't be touched by this policy, right? So if someone's being pursued, if they're fleeing.
Well, I understand, but I'm just saying, but I think there are lists or definitions of exigent circumstances that we could look at as a model of,
The public defender or umpire justice might have this already.
Right here. Therefore, like it says, hot pursuit, fleeing, escaping, suspect, danger to arresting officer or the public for mobility or destruction of the evidence. So those are just 4. And so you can put a lot of stuff underneath each of those categories.
And would it be okay to say examples? I mean, I got something too, is if people
Example
want some
is better.
kinds of examples of circumstances.
Yeah, I think we could do that, but bear in mind, this is a piece of possible proposed legislation. Don't know what function examples would have in a piece of legislation. So I think you are provided with the original language with the model legislation, which we plan to submit if this is accepted.
Can you footnote it? Can you footnote it?
Oh, absolutely. We'll do that.
Okay. Can you talk a little more about what it would mean to create a hierarchy of what to ensure people?
But we're still in the first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we gotta,
Okay. I thought we just finished.
well, because we have a motion on it to accept it or not, so we're gonna.
Oh, we vote separate motion on that.
Yeah.
Take it.
Hey, you
I shouldn't be parliamentary.
No, but I did make sure we were. I just took the torch. So do we wanna, so are we gonna table that suggestion right now?
I would like to, you indicated that there's other cities that do this and that they have lists. I would like to, have a look at the list at some point in time and maybe that will
Okay. Or
satisfy.
could we make the suggestion that we define the 4 categories and then give some examples? Is that okay?
It's up to you.
All right. I mean, that seems simpler, right?
Okay, make the motion, so
Well, a friendly amendment
friendly amendment.
to Bill's, which is to say that we will outline the 4 categories, legal categories related to exigent circumstances, and then give examples with regard to voluntary searches. Or, yeah. Or voluntary consent to search. What?
Is that okay, Bill?
Sure.
Okay.
The only thing I'm thinking
Did we have a
is, you know,
second on that?
voluntary becomes involuntary at that point, but yeah.
Okay, Daniel seconded that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, all in favor of that amendment?
Okay. Now, can you give me an example? Right? What would the hierarchy is? What that means?
No example was provided with this comment. I'm not quite sure what it would look like. I think this is very similar to the previous comment. So for those situations, the 4 that were outlined, if we're rushing to a fire, which no person is in the vicinity of the fire, would that be the same as someone's life is in danger? Let me stop seeking this consent and handle that versus let me stop this consent and go throw water, some flames. I think that's what folks had in mind. Yeah.
Okay. So would you, in terms of your recommendation, do you think we should, it says here, create a hierarchy to ensure that you said the following revisions are suggested, but it seems like actually you don't really think that that's necessary.
I don't, but
Okay.
I don't want to speak for the people.
Well, we want to rely on your professional opinion here.
I mean, as we do these recommendations or not, there is another layer process for this. Obviously goes to council. People can talk to their council member if they feel there's something missing. And they may have questions for us anyway about our ideas. So that we're just doing the first draft and making sure this is actually acted on.
That's
I
right.
don't, do we don't need if we're not going to have a revision, do we need to have a vote about that? We can just move on unless anybody wants that added.
We never made a motion for it, so we can move on.
But I don't know if we need to have a motion.
No, I said we never did anyway, so I think we can just move.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
right. That's it.
All right, part 3 under voluntary consent searches is about process. 27 separate comments were provided on the process by which officers gain the consent. These comments call for additional specificity and execution, specifically in areas such as explanation of rights and the involvement of interpreting services. Based on these, the following revisions are suggested. Draft scripted language to guide officers as they explain their rights to citizens while attempting to gain the consent to search. And the second recommendation is to specify procedure on how an officer utilizes interpreting services.
So at this point, there is no script.
Language in the proposal simply says use non-threatening language.
So then you gotta define non-threatening.
After the same discussion we had as part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just stopping someone is threat enough.
I'm a little confused. I'm surprised that there isn't, either in their training or in best practices of the RPD, here's the idea of, 9% of the words we want you to use if you're stopping somebody. Really, there isn't any more definition than, just be nice. I mean, this guy.
Yeah, I mean,
I would think legally they have to have something more they've been told to say or not to say.
right. There's also, in our disciplinary matrix, what we noticed was courteous. It's one of the measurements RPD uses to make sure the officers are behaving appropriately. When they're discourteous, they can be disciplined for that. So there is some culture, at least there's trying to be a culture within RPD based off their own policies where courteousness and being kind is required. This just makes it very clear that we are ensuring that they are courteous in the way that they seek consent and not threatening.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend that the officers have a script.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I also think that I like the language of this illustrative. Sorry. But I think that it should start with a sentence about, we would like to search X because.
Repeat that?
In other words, in terms of voluntary search, it should start, because language here says we can only search if you say it's okay, but before that, they should have to say, we would like to search your purse because we think you stole cigarettes. I don't know, whatever, but to say, we would like to search your car because it was reported that a vehicle like this, was fleeing. Who knows, whatever. But do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. To sort of fill that in, because otherwise you're just starting with, is it okay if I search you? But you haven't explained what you're searching and why you want to do it.
But do they really have to tell you the reason why they want to search you? If they ask you, I'm just saying, if they ask you, can I search your car, right? And you say no, that should be the end of the conversation.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the need of them telling you what they need to search you for?
Because then you may say yes.
Because you may say yes.
Right. If you don't have the stolen thing in your purse, you might say, sure, look at it.
We think there's a kidnapped kid in your trunk. That's why we want to search it. Okay.
Huh?
But
I think there's a
that's
connection.
But my point being is, if I say no, it's no. I don't care what you. This me. If I tell you no, you can't search my car or my person, then that answer is no. I don't care what reason you got to search me. The answer is still gonna be no.
Well, that's fine, but for somebody
So that's
else,
too
it
much.
might be helpful.
To me, that's
to
too
know.
much.
Okay.
Because I would say yes. I mean, if they explain why
They
they're
might put
doing
something in
it,
it.
I would say yes.
Okay, but perhaps I'm not following it clearly. It seems as though when the officer approaches and says, may I search your purse, that it's at that point that he or she gives a reason why they want to search your purse. Then you state, yes, you can, no, you can't, but they have at least told you why they've approached you and want to do that. Not ask after you say yes or no and then tell you why. This is at the beginning, am I following it correctly? This is at the beginning, when they first put, Rabbi said, I want to search your purpose because.
Right.
And then you say, to get you. Or,
Right, and then you go out with the language, we can only search if you say it's okay. If you don't want us to search, if you look at the language in the example, right, then it goes on.
okay, all right. So it's at the beginning of the conversation, not later, not further down the line, okay.
Yeah.
Guess my question is, do we really want to, we're not authors here or script writers, do we really want to, are we saying they should have scripted language? This is a general idea of it, or are we trying to do a draft of what that scripted language
I
should
think we
be?
can give them suggested scripted language. I don't see any reason why not. I mean,
So
do you have a
there's,
comment about that?
there's also opportunity for collaboration here, right? One of the directives could be that we do create scripted language, but in the legislation, instead of writing the script out, call for there to be a process where RPD and PAB staff sit down and draft language.
Like the MOU.
Do we really think they're gonna do that?
If the legislation's passed to do it, they have to do it. We have to do it with them. City council says so.
I think having voices who are out there doing the work, present at the table, might be helpful. Insightful.
And actually, and they can have, I mean, they may have, even before it gets to the legislative point of it being passed, that conversation could have happened beforehand. That could be part of the legislation if there's already a conversation. The council probably would want to be a part of that, and us and RPD with staff, and RPD saying, here's ideas that we're working on for what this language is.
But all we're saying is, we want the officer to explain why they're conducting a voluntary search.
No, but this illustration has the rest of the script.
Yeah, I saw the illustration.
Right, so in other words, right, so the question is whether we want the revision to include a script or whether we want to say the specific language should be developed,
Co-created with the RPD and the PAB, co-created. Right?
co-created, but with city council, maybe and RPD.
I think it's simpler just to say that the officer needs to give a reason and let them create, the script themselves. Because once you know why they pulled you over or why they're asking to search your purse or whatever, I mean, that kind of de-escalates the situation too. Because the worst thing is to get pulled over and ask why and not given a reason.
Right, but then you also need to know that you don't have to agree.
Right, I agree.
So that's why that's language. Okay, so I'm going to amend my motion to say, and then you people can object, but that this language be revised to suggest that the script itself be developed in a cooperative process among PAB, City Council, and RPD, but that it include these elements.
Okay, I keep hearing you all say pulled over. I thought this was not about being pulled over. What,
It's about anything. It's
It
about,
can be.
yeah, voluntary
That's right.
search.
Usually you wouldn't, if it's just a traffic stop, you're pulled over for the sake of a broken tail light. And then for some reason, they ask to search, but it's not relative to the reason you were stopped, nor is there something in plain view or another exception that gives rise to a legal search, then this would apply.
okay, I guess I'm confused because I asked that question about being pulled over. And I thought you all said that it wasn't about being pulled over. It was just about,
It could be.
It's one of their.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where a lot of
But not all pullovers are equal. I think that's
Right.
They be leaving the grocery store and they.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was getting into my car once where someone said that I was apparently swerving like I was drunk and there was a child in my car. And I said, you can see there's no trunk with this car because it was a hatchback.
Right.
So apparently someone was seeing the wrong car.
Mm-hmm.
The excuse for them to pull you over.
No, it's actually in the parking lot of the rest area. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And I said, no, and I wasn't gonna let them search because I knew I didn't have a kid sitting in the back seat. Because I said, I think I would have had a car seat. Now, you could beat my brains out at that point, but you know, I have a kid.
Right.
Without a car seat.
Okay, maybe we should vote on this.
Oh, okay, and one of the things just to make sure I'm following this, is that we're talking about being courteous and how to approach the person. That was the underlying thing for all of this. That's why we're asking about a script. That's why we're talking about how to put it together, because we want the officer to be clear, but also be nice about how he or she is doing. Okay, gotcha.
So to piggyback on that, we're talking based on what you provided here, and it sounds like the folks in the community are asking for explanation of rights. So in that script, what needs to be highlighted is what the rights of the person being searched, voluntary search, because we're talking about someone who just said, okay, this is the only case we're talking. So any situation can happen. We're just talking about when someone says, all right, you can do that. So now we already talked about body worn camera. We talked about the language you're going to use. That's pretty much written, pretty much what's written down on paper. But now the process in itself. So now the process in itself, that people asking that they want their rights to be explained. I think that's probably like the most important thing in this script, because people want to know, all right, what can and cannot do? Because being searched voluntarily, the fear is pretty much gone, because you would hope the fear is gone because you're saying okay.
Right.
So to minimize someone feeling that, all right, something bad's going to happen to me, what's my rights right now? Another thing we as a board have to figure out, all right. And also, whatever the law abides, of course, I'm not trying to listen right and wrong thing, but yeah, I think that's what the most important thing people want to know, what can I do? And how do I know that this search is not going to end up, I'm not going to end up in jail that night? Right? I'm just trying to summarize it all.
Okay, so that's why the 3 different agencies are going to work on the language for what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm glad. It's just, I think the most important thing is folks want to know, right? All the discussion we're having, make sure I know what can and cannot do, because I don't want to go to jail before this search is over, because I'm saying yes.
Right.
And that's like, all right, so I should feel fine. I should be sitting down. You can search me. Everything's fine. But I think that's what we're trying to minimize that. Just pretty much be more professional.
I guess a part of the language is when they do pull you over, stop you, whatever happens, when they ask you, can I search you, but you have the right to say no or the right to say yes.
Yeah. I think
that to me would be.
That should be in that script.
It's already there.
Yeah, I know. I think it's just I think people want to make sure they hear that when it happens, right?
So I think that goes, if you can restate your,
Okay.
and then we'll call the vote on it.
All right, then we ask for a revision of the section in which PAB, RPD, and and CC, the City Council, work on language that clarifies the individual's rights related to an involuntary search, and also the purpose of the nature and purpose of the search.
Okay. I second. All in favor? All in favor?
Yes.
All right.
The second one will specify procedure on how an officer utilizes interpreting services.
So there is no procedure at this point?
Not in this piece of legislation, no.
Are there procedures elsewhere in the RPD policies or whatever?
Yes.
That could just be duplicated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would like to move, I'm sorry to keep on doing this, that we ask it to be revised, saying that the language regarding interpretation be consistent with other RPD policies. Does that work for you?
This is from the people. I want to make sure that I'm covering what the people.
Yeah, well, I agree, but will that take care? I mean,
I don't
are there?
that rise to the level of what folks' concern
Okay.
actually is. So I think one of the things that I was hearing from the public is, while yes, they have some interpreting services, it's not robust enough. While this legislation doesn't, specifically focus on interpreting services, there is an opportunity to look at where gaps may be in current RPD policy and to address those, at least in this limited area, but also beginning the conversation on the larger need for change in that area.
Okay.
I guess I'm new, I don't know all the terminology. So when you're talking about interpreting services, what exactly is that?
That's what they're looking for us to specify. So it's not clear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not interpreting like the deaf?
That's one of the
Oh,
possibilities.
okay, okay, okay,
Yep.
okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So what's the motion?
Well, okay. Rethink this. So is this something too that you would think that would benefit from a cooperative process, or do you think?
Yes.
Okay, so let's, if in a sense, can we add that this, whatever working group it is, right, will also examine policies concerning interpretive services, and I don't know, that's enough, I guess, right?
Okay. All in
Or
favor?
create a procedure. Yeah.
Yeah, say it again then.
I'm sorry, that the working group will create a procedure on how an officer utilizes interpreting services. Yeah, we're gonna have to do part 2.
Yeah.
Come back anymore.
Do you want to go through the rest of this tonight? Do you want to come back and?
Oh, we have a vote on the floor, so let's
I'm
get.
sorry.
No, that's it. You second that?
I second that.
All in favor of Rabbi Settle's amendment? All right. Passes unanimous. So we have 2 more pages worth of things, 2.5 more pages worth of things to look at. It is 7:50. 3 more, well, yeah. It has, oh, yeah, there's a full page now. So we can continue to plow through this. We do have an executive session potentially that we have something to discuss. So I'll take,
Till next time,
if you want to finish this next month,
yeah.
and we could always email and talk among ourselves in between, or do you want to? I want to continue to power through, but I'm not voted.
If we can, just get halfway.
Oh, yeah, I think we're.
Yeah.
Well, how about if we give a time frame?
Okay.
So for instance, if we are going into executive session, do you have any sense of how long you think that might last?
I don't think it'll be long. I think there's a review panel afterwards too, though, so.
All right, so could I recommend that are people available till 8:30 if we run that long?
Looks like to me it's gonna be longer than 8:30.
But, okay, so can I suggest we go to 8:15 on this and then go into executive session?
Let's say 8 o'clock.
Okay, you wanted to plow through, I was trying to.
I know, but if it's not unanimous.
I will do a time check at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll do a time check at 8. 7:51 right now. So.
All right.
Okay.
So, second section, it's on identification of police officers. The first area of possible revision is the process. 46 comments regarding the process of officer identification were provided. Nearly all of the comments were made in support of the concept of officer identification and called for additions such as inclusion of off-duty officers in this policy. The only comments made in opposition were provided by RPD themselves. Their concern is that implementing this change could end policing in local by adding unnecessary restrictions. It should be noted that the same argument was made about Miranda rights back in 1966. With that in mind, here's the recommendation. Extend the policy of officer identification, i.e. business cards, to off-duty officers and not just those who are in plain clothes.
Oh, it's someone else make this motion.
What were the examples people were talking about when they talk about off-duty officers engaged in duty work?
So let's say they're off the clock, they're not in their uniform, but they witness something and they act as if they're under the color of law, like stop a person, detain them, engage in actual police work while they're not on the clock. that would be an example of something that counts here.
There's not already a policy where at some point they have to, I just thought there was something where at some point if you're engaging in actions and you're not in uniform, there already was a policy of you have to say something at some point along the line.
I'd have to go back and look at that.
I just hate to duplicate, like, I don't know what that is, but I know, like, let's say they have handcuffs somewhere, let's say they get a radio, let's just say they use their cell phone. At some point, the person they're engaging with, I know they have to say, I'm assuming they don't have their badge on them, although they probably usually do, but, I don't want to add something that's already existing as opposed to
So
amending
can we
something.
make it conditional that if the policy does not already exist, it be created?
Sure.
I also think it might be useful, that they have to identify themselves initially, right? You don't wait till the handcuffs are on.
Yeah. Or if you don't have handcuffs, if you're taking other actions, yeah,
Right, but-
which I think there is something they have to,
Right.
there's a set to practice, but I don't know what it is.
Okay.
So what would the motion
Someone-
Good, you're on a roll.
All right, the motion is that if there is no existing policy, that these rules should extend to off-duty officers who engage in on-duty behavior.
What rule would that be?
I saw that different as, or is there, or if there is not, as opposed to. I'm assuming there is one, I think it's
Okay.
more so a publicizing.
If there's not an existing policy that requires off-duty officers to engage in on-duty behavior to identify themselves, such a policy should be included in RPD's policies.
Yeah,
Not elegant, but whatever, we can.
all right, I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Okay, the next portion is of the business cards themselves. 34 comments regarding the use of business cards were provided, and they all were in support. There was concern about the availability of the cards and what happens when cards are not available. There are also some suggestions that, RPD use QR codes instead of physical cards or some other electric form of cards. Here are the recommendations. Create a process by which an electronic card can be made available.
Oh, yeah, I think I love the QR code idea, because that way you don't have to worry about having a ton of cards, just be one card that's got the QR code. And QR, oh, go ahead.
So everybody don't have
Right.
electronics to do that, okay?
No,
So, no, I'm just saying, so if somebody stopped or whatever, it could be a homeless person or whoever, they might not have a phone, they might not have anything to click that onto that, so I guess I'm gonna suggest that they have physical and electronic business cards.
that's where it was in addition to the, yeah. But I'll take your amendment, a friendly amendment, and you just got to it before I did, but yeah. I think, it should be a given now that you have QR codes and access to that, because for a lot of people that is their norm. But until we get to a completely wireless or completely online wireless society, which hopefully doesn't happen because that'd be bad for Big Brother, there should be the cards that they're giving out already. But there should be a QR code either on that card and or just one they can just have that's, I don't know, maybe a separate, and some way separate that people can scan the QR code. So I guess I will do,
Can I just ask what is supposed to be on those cards?
Yeah, so the officer's name, rank, command, and PAB contact information.
And the supervisor,
I think,
Yeah,
the supervisor.
Right, but that's in legislation.
Well,
let's talk about that, yeah, because
Okay.
I know there's gonna be controversy around having our contact information on there. And that might just,
Do what?
Not having PAB on their cards was.
Yeah, that'll just be like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Right.
And
I don't think,
yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry, so you're saying because we don't have PAB cards?
No,
No, the police
no.
department.
would have our information on their card is what its recommendation.
RPD was vehemently against the concept of contact information or business cards that they would have to handle.
Well, I said supervisor, I didn't know about.
Yeah, but that was within that.
It's part of it.
It says
I'm sorry,
PAB.
so I didn't write it down in my brain, so it's gonna have their name,
The name, rank,
rank,
their command officer.
the command officer.
PAB contact.
How about contact information for them?
No.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not gonna give you their personal cell phone.
Like a phone number and email.
I don't think, I don't know, whatever.
No. I mean,
That's a little too personal.
Yeah.
well, no, I mean,
Well,
that's a
it doesn't have to be
personal one.
personal,
Their
it could
city
be
one. We're
the
mobile.
district phone or something.
911 or 3.
No,
Three-
don't use 911 for that. I mean, I don't know, it's like, why can't they just call, can't they call the, I don't know, they can call the district, you know? It used to be the precinct, but I don't think we used, do they use that term?
Sections now.
No, section,
Section.
that's right, but so it could be the section name, you know, number
Okay.
and email, something like that.
So,
So just changing sections now.
so to be clear, I don't think, is there a motion on this?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's to have physical and QR and to include, in addition to what's already listed, contact information for the section, so folks can get in touch with the
But
office.
not PAB and contact information.
So no PAB,
We'll let go of that.
okay, no PAB contact.
The RPD was vehemently opposed.
Because I can also
I
understand,
can say there's a, okay.
yes, because I can understand the feeling like not every interaction is necessarily a problem, right? So the assumption that there's, you know,
Yeah.
Should be noted, the PAB does accept commendations.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
where an officer interaction has gone positive,
Yeah.
one of the things the business card could lead to is a positive commendation for that officer. And my division specifically is interested in commendations because what that could mean, when an officer is acting right, but most of the other officers aren't following those same actions, there's an area for policy improvement so that officers' actions become department policy.
And the state does that already, state patrol.
That's right.
That's not.
Any seconds?
Well, because they're so skittish, and did you say that once this is etched in stone, it can never go back and be adjusted?
No, I mean, there's an alternative method for that. So,
Oh, okay.
as Larry pointed out, this will have to go to city council. And if they choose to act, there's their own amendment process that has to take place. Folks can reach out to their city councilors and ask for those amendments.
Okay.
But for us, it's either we're revising it here today, accepting it as it is, or we're rejecting it. And if we're revising, we'll go back, and then we'll come back for another vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as it stands, I would leave PAB information off for right now.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that, Harley.
I said, on the police officer's card that we're talking about, that I would not put the PAB contact information on his card.
Okay. Seconds?
Second.
Harrison, all in favor? That's okay. Oh, no question.
I'm just trying to understand why you don't want PAB information on it. This is just wondering.
Yeah.
What good is it gonna do to people?
I'm just because, like, for instance, like, let's say if you're getting a service from somewhere, and usually have like well, you don't like this service, you know who to call, kind of thing. Like, wouldn't that fall in line like this if it's a officer stopping someone or searching someone, and they already have everything in the same spot, where it's just it could be a good or bad. But I'm just thinking like a worst case scenario. So just they know who the contact is already there. I know we're advertising, I know we're marketing a lot in the community, but like just you're already gonna get it from the officer you're working with. It's good to have like in your mind like, okay, I know who to contact if this thing goes wrong.
Or for commendations or concerns.
Yeah. So it's just like.
I see this, I mean, this is really for the, but this is really a unique question, because really our role is, I mean, I see it as our role is being a resource and, doing accountability But what we're talking about here is how somebody follows up with an officer,
Yeah,
which doesn't necessarily mean they're always going to have a complaint.
okay.
But I mean, and I would rather us have, like we have, so how far do we push of where we're saying that our information should be there?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know the answer because I mean, I understand the concern of this. But you know, this is more of a, just how does a person follow up with an officer they're engaged with? How do they follow up and do a complaint?
Mhm.
That's a lot of the work that we're doing in other ways. I don't know if that's a part of, we're talking specifically here about who's this person that pulled me over, how do I follow up with them?
I guess
Okay.
also, like, I don't want to have to fight I want these cards to happen,
Mhm.
right? So I'd rather have that in place and then later we can talk about adding PAB, but if the police are adamant that they don't want it, then that can be an excuse not to have the cards at all.
Okay,
But I don't want that to happen.
I get that point.
Yeah, I'm not worried about having that fighter discussion because especially with the QR code,
Yeah.
you could put like a million things on there.
Okay,
It's just different than having the card itself.
Okay.
It could be multiple languages. It could be, you know, it could be a video. You know, there's all kinds of things you put in the QR code. But
Yeah.
just get in the discussion of let's have, you know, what that starts to look like.
Yeah, because we want to be careful not to try and take them too far too fast.
Yeah, all right. I get what you're saying. And I keep forgetting about the whole electronic, you know, option. That's new for myself as well. So yeah.
All right, unanimous.
Yeah.
And we are at 8:02. So make a motion that we put a pause on this till our next meeting.
Could we just finish this one part about the language? In multiple languages. Require cards to be provided in multiple languages. Though with this information, I'm not sure how different it is, right?
Sorry, ma'am.
Name, rank, serial number.
Or if it's name, rank, serial number, if it's name, rank, command, you know, phone and email, how much of that needs translated?
Yeah, not a lot. But
So, I mean, you could have, all right. I would like to make a motion that the design of the card integrate English and Spanish language for the key information. And then maybe, I mean, do you feel like, but this comes to interpretive policy, you know, around interpret, because, you know, for instance, I know like in hospitals where you see in all these different languages, you know, there's an interpreter involved, you know, available, blah, blah, blah. So I think that piece of it comes under the interpretation services discussion, not necessarily under the card. Does that make sense?
yeah, I agree. I think
Yeah. So we're saying only 2 languages?
For the initial
To
card.
start, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, those are not the only.
No, of course not, but they are the majority languages.
On the card, and the QR code can have a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. But as I said, if they're, you know, if there's clearly that communication, like if they can tell that, you know, they're not, that they need language, and there's some other resource that they can have with them that comes through the policy around interpretive service.
That is, fell in love with this QR code. Every time we mention it, little eyes open, oh, yes,
Yeah, you
yes.
can
we shall do
experiment
that.
last second.
So I think second for Rabbi Settle.
Daniel just did.
Is that okay? All in favor?
Discuss the language.
Yeah, that was,
That's what we're just voting on.
Did you have something else you wanted
It's
to
only got English and Spanish. There's multiple languages in the United States and in Rochester.
We said initially.
They're gonna start with Spanish, English, and the QR code may have some other options for them. But just at the start.
But the issue, I mean, in terms of just a business card, right? So the idea is that because they're also going to talk about policy for interpretive services, if someone is not an English or Spanish speaker, there's already going to be a policy in place about how they communicate with them.
So they're gonna be there at the time the person gets back.
That's gonna be developed in the policy.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the idea.
Because of the size of the card, unlike the list that's at the pharmacy, with the 53, with the various, these cards are not gonna be large enough to include all of the different languages, even if you do front and back. So that's why, for this initial we said just the two, English and Spanish. And the QR code can have other languages included. So if they scan that, their Arabic or whatever can come up. But for the initial, just those two, so we can get this thing off the ground.
Thank you all for your.
Well, before, just for your vote on that, did you want to vote yes, no, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll, motion to table this until next month. Okay, all in favor of tabling?
I'm in favor of table. Is it possible for us, if necessary, to have a meeting in between? I want to hold this up for a month.
No,
I really don't.
I don't blame
Well-
And so,
And to be clear, the legislative process, it's a once a month thing. So even if we pass this today, there's no guarantee we can have the revisions made by, I think the date is October 17th. That will start the clock for council, and their vote wouldn't happen until November. So if we wait until next month, we'll look at December.
Yeah. So we can always call a special meeting and finish the rest, or if there's other action we want to take in a special meeting.
yeah, I think a special meeting, let's get rid of this.
Well, we'll take that, if we do a special meeting, we'll announce that in advance to the public. I don't want to decide right this moment, but I think it's a possibility. Yep. All right, wait, did we vote on the motion table?
Oh, sorry to.
Well, we started to.
Sorry, okay, so all in favor of tabling for now,
Until our next meeting.
until our next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, any new business? I'd like to make a motion to go to executive session to discuss a specific legal matter or action that we may take as a board. All in favor of executive session? All right, we are adjourning for executive session. We are back from executive session. We did take one vote. So we took a vote to authorize legal action on behalf of the PAB. It was unanimous vote of everybody in executive session. All right, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning? All right, that concludes our business. Thank you for watching.